Hi guys, welcome back to Elizabeth Ann Reads. I should probably welcome myself back to Elizabeth Ann Reads. It has been a while, and yeah, here I am. I am doing well. A few of you have reached out and asked, and I really appreciate that. I'm doing very, very well. I was just reevaluating some things and just kind of enjoying being more leisurely with my reading. Not more leisurely, I've read a lot. I just haven't felt pressure, I guess, to read or to read certain things. So yeah, and reevaluating some things which I've come to no decisions or conclusions for sure, but I'm here for now, and we're going to mix it up a little bit and do things a little bit differently. And I haven't quite figured out what that looks like, but today it looks like a recent reads. I've decided I'm not going to do monthly wrap-ups necessarily, at least for a little bit, because I don't always feel like I want to talk about everything I read or that you guys want to hear about everything I read, and sometimes I just don't have strong feelings. And yeah, so I'm going to do recent reads, but it's going to be a little different in that I'm going to try and group things, like do a themed recent reads. So you can probably tell from whatever I titled this that today's books are all contemporaries. So these are 5 books that I've read in the last 3 months, so June, July, August, that are all contemporary. If you haven't been around my channel long enough to figure out my reading tastes, just a heads up, I tend to have unpopular opinions about popular books. I tend to not like YA, and contemporary is not my genre. So take all of what I'm saying today with a grain of salt, because this does not reflect probably the popular opinions, and it certainly may not reflect yours. So just keep in mind, this is not usually what I read, and take that into account. But without further ado, let's get into it. Like I said, I have 5 contemporaries to share with you today, and I'm actually going to rank them, starting with my least favorite to my favorite. My least favorite and favorite were pretty easy to identify. The 3 in the middle are a little more fluid. They could interchange a little bit. They all ended up being 3 stars on Goodreads. So keep that in mind too. I think I have them in order, but there's a little bit of flexibility in there. But let's start at the bottom with the 5th, with my least favorite, I guess, of these 5 books. And also, just a heads up, I did, just as of filming this, I did just read this yesterday, so my thoughts are pretty fresh, so there may be a little ranting happening. But I read When You Were Everything by Ashley Woodfolk. This is a new release YA contemporary that follows 2 girls in high school, Cleo and Layla. They are best friends. They've been best friends for about 4-ish years, and they are in their sophomore year of high school now. And this book deals with the topic of friendship breakups. So not romantic breakups, but the losing of a best friend, at the end of a friendship, which I think is an important topic that doesn't get discussed enough and talked about enough, and something that most of us have probably experienced in our lives. And it can be, I think it's a different kind of pain and heartbreak than a relationship breakup. Yeah, we won't get into too much of my feelings about friendship breakups. We're going to talk about the book. But the themes kind of this book are of letting go, moving on, being able to move past the hurt and be able to trust and open yourself up to new friendships. All of these are good things. My problem with the book was the whole relationship between Cleo and Layla to begin with, and how it fell apart. Because in my mind, it didn't need to. There didn't need to be a friendship breakup here. So let me back up a little bit, give you a little more without going into spoilers. Basically, they start their sophomore year in high school, and Layla wants to get into the choir, the chorus group. And so she ends up with kind of a new circle of friends, and just very different people, and Cleo feels left out, and you know how it goes. You've been there. The issue with this book, again, is that the friendship breakup didn't need to happen. There were a million chances along the way for them to have a conversation, to straighten things out, to be a little forgiving of each other. But what did happen is that they weren't honest with each other. They didn't express how they were really feeling. They kept things bottled up until they exploded, and then they became these, nasty, vindictive bitches that were just horrible, horrible people. And I don't care how you feel or how you're being treated even. That does not give you the right to become such a vindictive person. And like just so much nastiness and bullying and rumors and gossip and starting rumors not just about people but about families and things that could potentially destroy lives. And I just didn't, it didn't feel necessary. I felt like, if so many times along the way they could have had a heart to heart, could have either gotten their friendship back on track or decided their paths were kind of swerving away from each other, and that's okay too. But they could have done it. The whole nastiness felt so unnecessary. It's like Mean Girls without the hilariousness that is Mean Girls. It was just nasty, and I didn't like it, and I just was really annoyed with the two of them by the end because it all felt so unnecessary. So anyway, those are my feelings about that book. Number 4 on my list is Liane Moriarty, What Alice Forgot. This is the third Liane Moriarty I've read. And this follows Alice, who has an accident at the gym one day. She hits her head and wakes up and has forgotten the last 10 years of her life. So in her mind, it's 10 years previous. She is fairly newly married, pregnant with their first child. She's in love. She's happy. Everything's perfect. But in reality, she is a mother of 3 and is going through a pretty nasty divorce. And I loved this concept. I loved the idea of the book. I loved some of what the book did. But I honestly thought it dragged out the story way too long. That this is 450 pages, and it just didn't need to be that long. There was too much detail, stuff I didn't care about, just dwelling too much on nothing. But then it got to the end, like the last 30 pages, it wraps up super, super fast and doesn't really deal with the resolution. You go through this heartbreak of her realizing why her husband hates her, why they hate each other, what's wrong with the family, all these things. You go through all this long, slow, drawn out, and then at the end, you skip ahead 3 months and everything's better. And it didn't explain how things got fixed. It didn't explain. The book itself was okay, other than it was too long, but the ending just, I wanted so much more after so much story drawn out. The ending was just nothing. And I wanted more for the ending. The third book on my list is In 5 Years by Rebecca Searle. In this we follow 2 women. Dani, who is a type A personality. She works for a law firm. She has her whole life planned out. Everything's, set perfectly in her mind. And then you have her best friend, Bella, who is much more of a free spirit. She's artistic. She does interior decorating, that type of thing. And you have this friendship between these 2 girls. But the hook for this book is that Dani, at the beginning of the book, she gets engaged and goes home that night after she gets engaged, falls asleep on the couch, and wakes up 5 years in the future and spends 1 hour in this 5-year future. She's in a different apartment with a different guy, and then she falls back asleep and wakes up back in her current life. So she just has this 1 hour glimpse of a completely different life that doesn't seem like her at all, which is a great hook and really interesting. Unfortunately, that part was what failed for me. The bulk of the story is the story of Dani and Bella's friendship. And everything that When You Were Everything did wrong, I thought In 5 Years did really well. It's a beautiful story of friendship between these 2 women and what happens when tragedy strikes, how they deal with it, how they love each other through the hard things, how they're honest and real with each other. And that part of the story was super solid in my mind and would have ranked much higher on this list. Except I hated the way they brought the hook back at the end. I hated it. I can't really say anything without being super spoilery, but if you've read this book, leave me a comment or shoot me a message on Instagram, because I'd love to talk to you about it. But I was so annoyed when it ended with how that little 1 hour, 5 years in the future, how that tied up. It just irritated me to no end. So the book itself is solid. The friendship story, I think, is fantastic. I didn't like kind of the way it was bookended. All right, book number 2 on the list is The Bookshop on the Corner by Jenny Colgan. This is it's a chicklet, I guess, more than just straight contemporary. And I actually buddy read this with Rainy over at Rainy Day Reads, and it was a fun experience to read it with her. This follows Nina, who has just been laid off from her job at the library. She decides to follow her dreams, basically, and moves north to Scotland and opens up a mobile library. No, not library, bookshop. She's selling books. Mobile bookshop. and basically starts a whole new life. And it's complete fluff, but very enjoyable. I liked Nina. I liked the whole, starting a new life, making new friends, everything being fresh. I really liked that aspect of it. The part that I didn't like was once again at the end, because in the last 50 pages or so, she hooks up with a guy, which you totally see coming. I mean, it's not like that was a surprise. But it felt so unnecessary. It felt like it was just tacked on the end because it's chick lit and it has to have a romance in it. I didn't feel any chemistry between the main characters. I was annoyed because it felt like the author was saying, even if, you can do all these things and move and start a completely new life, but life is not complete unless, you're having earth-shatteringly good sex 4 times a day. I was just annoyed. That may just be me, because I know this book is pretty well received, and it's a good story. Again, it was just those last 50 pages that seemed really unnecessary, and it's not explicit. It's fine. It just, like, really? She couldn't just be happy in her new life with new friends? Yeah, that's just me. But anyway, it's still a good read. I enjoyed it. My favorite contemporary that I've read in the last 3 months is Surprise! American Royals by Katharine McGee, which everything about this shouldn't appeal to me. That's not true. It's YA, and it seemed like one of those books that I wouldn't work for me. However, I do have a weak spot for alternate history, which is what this is. So, in case you're unaware, this follows the Washington family. So basically, if after the American Revolution, if George Washington had become king instead of president, if we had a monarchy instead of our democratic republic. So you follow the Washington family, and mostly you follow Beatrice, who is the current princess. She is the eldest daughter of George the Third, whatever George we're on now. And she is going to be the nation's first queen, because the law has just been changed so that it is no longer the eldest son that takes over as king, but it is just the oldest child becomes the reigning monarch. So she will be the first woman that is queen by birth, not by marriage. And she's young. She's just finished college, I think, so she's in her early 20s. So you follow her as well as her younger siblings. She has twin boy and a girl, who are Samantha and Jefferson. And you kind of follow their 3 lives and what's going on with them. I really waffled back and forth on this book on whether I was enjoying it or not. I was enjoying it, but it was also, everything seemed too neat and tidy. Like, there were a lot of relationships happening. Some of them were obviously wrong, but it felt like everything was set up to tie up so perfectly in the end. And I don't like perfect endings. I don't like everything tying up too neatly. I like it to be a little messy. So I was kind of anticipating this, it's going to tie up too neatly, and that's going to kind of ruin it for me. It didn't, though. It left the ending very, very messy. And I know there's a sequel coming out in a couple weeks. I think it comes out in September, which I will read. So, I mean, it's obviously leaving it open for a sequel. But I really appreciated how messy the ending was. And how just everything falls apart a little more than you even expect at the end. And I was actually pretty weepy at the end, which is not normal, especially with a contemporary book. So I would definitely recommend, if you are into alternate history or American history, especially now with the repopularization of Hamilton. I know some people are really into American history, and this has some fun little tidbits of American history in there. And yeah, so I would recommend this if you haven't picked it up yet. I know most people have, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a 4-star book for me, and yeah, I would recommend it. So that is it for today. 5 contemporaries that I've read recently. Let me know what you think of this format of doing kind of the themed recent reads instead of wrap-ups. We'll kind of see where I'm going to go with that, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. But anyway, let me know also if you've read any of these, what your thoughts were. I'd love to chat with you, because I have somewhat strong feelings on all of them, and would love to hear your opinions, whether they are the same as mine or not. But thank you for taking the time to watch. Hope you have a great day.